Welcome to Tea Time with Talent Acquisition, the podcast aimed at fostering knowledge and sharing stories within the vibrant talent acquisition community. I'm your host, Eden, and for the next hour or so, I'm going to be joined by a dynamic recruiter deeply immersed within the technical industry, who's not only perfected his recruitment skills, but also champions the cause of learning and development. His commitment extends beyond personal skills, enhancements for more effective consulting with hiring teams and applicants to offering personalized support towards the community in his one-to-one sessions. Specializing in assisting software engineers to craft those standout resumes, sharpen their interview skills, and help secure job opportunities that best match their abilities. Currently, he's part of a renowned tech hiring platform known for its psychological-driven approach towards recruitment. I'm excited for him to introduce and explore the innovative hiring strategies that, when implemented effectively, have the potential to significantly enhance software teams, streamline the hiring process, and boost diversity in the workplace. So when you're ready, grab your favorite tea or coffee if you prefer, and join me in welcoming today's guest, the talent acquisition partner from Codility, Youssef Lahbabi. So thanks so much, and thanks for bringing your coffee on this one.
I had to. I mean, I'm more of a coffee guy, especially if I have to speak for an hour. So I understand it's tea time, but it's coffee time for me.
I worked out not everyone's the tea drinker quickly enough, so I had to put the little plug for coffee drinkers in there as well. But it is genuinely genuinely a pleasure to have you involved in this. I know there's so much that we're going to unpack, and a lot of work that your colleagues, yourself have done. So we'll dive straight into it. But before we get into the core concepts of today's talk, there is a question I want to present to you, which I'm going to present to everybody in this series. And actually, I tagged you in it last week, so you've got a little bit of a head start in this one. So it's the same question, but I really liked your answer, so we're going to bring it back. So what is the biggest struggle that you believe talent acquisition teams face today?
Okay, I will need to remember what I wrote. It's, you know what, I really like the type of work you do. You're creating kind of a certain type of communication and collaboration with the industry, and that question actually made me think a lot. And before I answer it, I would say, just the fact that we have to ask ourselves that question is one of the challenges, right? Because if you don't ask yourself this question and you don't do something about your situation, especially as a TA, you might not have a job very soon. So we need to adapt, and we need to make sure that we are learning skills that are relevant for the market that we are in. So, as I said, I thought a lot about your question and what I'm going through, and the idea of collapsing the tech stack came to me. So the idea is very simple. It's from a post from the CPO of Adobe, Scott Belsky, who said basically in tech, the engineers or the product managers have to do more than what they used to. This is in line with the idea of efficiency. This is in line with cost savings, and also this is in line in making sure that there are no silos. So the idea is very simple. You are a software engineer. Instead of doing only backend, you're doing infrastructure, but you're also getting involved in product. Okay, so this is the idea that he gave. I just got inspired from it and thought, you know what, this also applies to any other departments and mine as well. So as a TA professional, I believe that it is not enough for me anymore to be a recruiter. I need to provide value in many different ways. So the biggest challenge for us this year is to develop our skill set to match the demand that will be there in the market. And we need to be agile. We need to be ready to adapt quickly. So what I'm doing, you mentioned learning and development, you mentioned coaching. All of these things are things that I'm developing. I'm not an expert in, I'm not a specialist, but I'm trying to get there. I'm trying to use my specialism in TA and then basically learn as I go. other skills. And we might be talking about that idea as well later on in this podcast.
Yeah, I absolutely love this, by the way, because I think I recognized this really heavily last year. With the layoffs happening in 23, across all professions, but TAs got hit hard, and as an external recruiter, of course, we get impacted just as hard as well. So we took stock and realized, okay, we can't just be recruiters either. So we've really developed other methods. What's the value that we're bringing in, and created workshops and processes behind the scenes to help internal teams upskill. Because you've got a lot of knowledge, we've got a lot of knowledge, and actually part of the podcast is one of those sorts of projects. And you hit the nail on the head. We could have just been recruiters 4 years ago, but moving into the next 4 years, if you're just a recruiter, you're going to get left behind. So yeah, I'm all for that. Now the topic that we're going to talk about is a skill-based approach to hiring, right? So we all know, obviously, when we're actually looking at candidates, or when we're reviewing candidates against the job descriptions, of course we want skills, we want hard skills, we want soft skills. You go through the process of that. But the approach that you and the team at Codility have kind of come to, and the realization you've come to, isn't just on a whim, right? So there's data behind it, there's research behind this approach. So first, we'll break down what we actually mean by skill-based hiring from the research and from your perspective.
Okay, just to bring a little bit more detail into the comment you had, like, we're not bringing this out of a whim. We do have a team of industrial and organizational psychologists that basically do research for us, assessment research, to understand what are the trends going on in the market, what do companies need, how are companies adapting to the current market. We get those insights, and we use them to develop our product further. Mm-hmm. So it's definitely on our minds quite a lot. And in a nutshell, what a skills-based approach means is, instead of taking a job as a role, so this is a job title, right? You're a backend engineer, you are a TA specialist, or whatever it is. We take this as, what are the 20, 30 skills that you need in order to do that role? And because the nature of the role might change quite a lot, the nature of the company might change quite a lot, what you're really after as a company where you're hiring, you're after a certain set of skills. So that's the first idea. So instead of having kind of a job-based approach and a role-based approach, you have a skill-based approach. Mm-hmm. And the important thing here is that with the advent of AI, we need to think about, what are the skills, not the roles? What are the skills that are going to be replaced by AI? So when you are kind of doing the research in terms of, are software engineers going to be, exist? Is this role going to exist in the future? What you do is actually break down, what does a software engineer actually do? Yeah. And then based on that, you have a list of skills. And instead of hiring for someone that is able, for example, to actually write the code, or someone that is good at something that Google can do well, or that you can find on Stack Overflow, whatever it is, theoretical knowledge maybe. You are looking for skills that are more in line with the new world of AI. For example, one big one is computational thinking. Computational thinking means that you are able to break down a problem in order to use the tools that you have, LLMs and others, and actually try find a solution. So breaking down the problem, structuring it, and then being able to use those tools to solve the problem. So we have a really good piece of research about computational thinking, but it goes way beyond that. There are so many other skills that we've worked on. And when we do our recruitment, this is the key thing. When we do our recruitment, we try to look at the skills. So let's say, for example, you want Python. You want a Python developer. Python is it's a lot of different things, right? Like, what does it mean that you are good at Python? You are good at data aggregation. Are you good at just writing? Are you good at the syntax? Are you good? What are you actually able to do with Python?
Mhm.
So in our assessments and the tests that we offer and the platform that we offer, we actually go further and use all the skills that are needed as a Python developer. And so our clients are able to see, okay, what exactly do I need in that team as well? So
Yeah.
I look at the skills that I have. Where do I have a skill gap? And then you're hiring for those skills, experts in those skills, instead of having the same type of skills and experts for your team. So it's a mix between understanding what you have in your team and then hiring for the skills that you're missing. So last example, if you think about, so I'm giving a lot of examples of software engineers
No,
because this is
it's fine.
this is what I do.
Yeah, I was gonna say a lot of the people
But let's
listening
say,
come from this
yeah,
field, so it's fine.
yeah. So as a TA, if you think about my role, and I've been thinking about this a lot. What is it that can be done by AI? For example, writing job descriptions, right?
Hmm.
But what AI cannot do is actually do the intake meeting. So with the hiring manager. So one of the skills of a recruiter, of a TA professional, is doing the intake meeting. What does that entail? It entails a skill of business acumen. It entails relationship building. It means you are able to organize your time as well, structure a meeting, etc. I'm just giving you some ideas. So these are the ideas. Okay, if we're looking for a TA professional, are we looking for a business partner that is able to do this? Is that really the need? And then you go further and go to each skill that a recruiter needs, right? And then you say, do we need someone that knows how to source? Do we actually need a sourcer? Maybe we have sourcing in our team. Maybe that's not what we need. So we're not going to go and look for a recruiter that can do everything. Maybe we're going for specific skills. This is at least my understanding of the skills-based approach. You can get lots of different answers, but this is the way that I understand it.
I'm hearing it's being very intentional with who you're bringing on. It's not just looking for a blanket skill set. Again, come back to Python. We just need Python and Django. Brilliant. They're two skills. They're two hard skills. But what do you need behind that? Why are you looking for that? Do we need a strong communication in the team? Do we need someone who's, a leader within that team as well? And it's being more intentional with what are you looking for from the beginning, using that as your focus point for pre-screening, I guess, and interviewing. So then ultimately you end up with maybe a less talent pool, but a more accurate talent pool, which brings higher value to your organization. Is that a fair assumption? Cool. All right. So
Yes, absolutely.
what are
Yeah.
the core areas then that the research has shown, when it comes to skill-based hiring?
So I mentioned our research on computational thinking,
Mhm.
and this was part of a big research that has been ongoing for the past 3 years, and we finally released it at the end of last year. And it is called the ESM model, so Engineering Skills Model. This is basically giving you an idea of what are all the skills that are required to be a top performer, a good software engineer. And maybe you can show the graph
Yeah,
as
yeah.
well for
I
people
was going to say,
to know.
this is obviously now released. So are you happy for us to link to this research? Okay,
Yes,
perfect.
we've basically done a comprehensive research to understand what are the skills needed today,
Mhm.
right? What is it that a software engineer needs to have today, but also preparing for the future. So and the number one thing when I read that, the number one thing that came to me is, well, look at this wheel. So
So
the first thing
before
is,
you continue, sorry.
you might think a software engineer is an engineer, right? You think of them as
Mhm.
techies, right? But the technical skills is only 1/4 of the whole wheel, right? You can be very, very good at technical skills, right? But is it enough today? Today, you need more collaboration. Today, you need engineers that understand the product, understand the value of their code. You need engineers that are able to influence. You need engineers that are able to break down problems, use AI in the best way possible, have critical thinking. all of these different things that a traditional software engineer might not have thought to develop their skills in. But based on the research that we've done, we see that this is the future. So all of the hiring that I personally do, and that many big companies do as well, is actually trying to hire and evaluate skills that are not only technical, right? So this for me is the number one thing that you can take out of this. So the ability to write code is not the only differentiator anymore. You might be able to write code, but might not be enough. Are you able to achieve results that are good for the business? Are you able to understand and work well with product managers, etc., etc.? So I strongly recommend. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but this is in a nutshell what I think is the most interesting, and I do encourage everyone to read the report. I will be, and my team will also be coming out with some bite-sized content to explain a little bit better different sides of this model. But this is basically one of the things that have impacted my own recruitment, right? So
it's
I'm currently still hiring.
It's seeing recruitment from a different lens, though, right? So just for anyone who's obviously just listening and not watching, we've got a wheel up which covers collaboration skills, problem solving skills, and technical skills. Obviously, again, the link will be in the description on this if you're listening on a podcast app. Obviously, if you're watching on YouTube or whatnot, you can see it's through there. So for those who are just listening, I know you've explained a little bit there, but we've got interpersonal skills in the middle, we've got collaboration skills, problem solving, and technical round, and then we've got a list of various skills that cover into each of those areas. But you've mentioned this report also looks into the future. So those skills that are listed, system thinking, critical thinking, computational thinking, as you said, these are skills that we're expecting to be more demand, or is this skills that are in demand today?
I would say it's both. I think it's starting to be in demand because I would say, especially this part of problem solving, it's with the advent of AI. Because today, all the time that was required to actually write the code, to actually like think about the syntax and all of those things, it's not relevant anymore. The value that I bring is to actually understand the problem in a deeper way. That means being able to speak with the product managers and the product with this product strategy, right? So, and to understand what we're trying to build. Second, understand the different kind of pros and cons of certain solutions. Go into depth basically in breaking down the problem and making sure that we are solving the right thing. Right? It's not about, okay, here is a problem, software engineer, go and solve it. It's more, here is a problem, help us understand it better and solve it together based on all our organizational goals. So to answer your question, yes, I'm seeing this already starting to make a difference, but it's also for the future. Basically, it's seeing what is going to happen. And one more thing, it's also kind of just one thing I wanted to mention is the market is also changing from a candidate market to an employer market, and the employers are now being able to be more picky and say, you know what, okay, you can code, but is that enough, right? Like they can say, we have maybe 5 other applicants that can do all of these things. Then for the software engineer today, it is necessary to develop those skills, right? And it's not only about problem solving, it's also about your communication. You mentioned it earlier: communication, teamwork, developing others, working with others, etc. So that was also something I wanted to mention.
Yeah, so we can, in theory, we can use the wheel that the team have created from the research as almost like a starting point for your own organization, and look in your current team, the makeup of it, what skills are missing out of that, what do we think we're going to need to be successful in this role for now and for the future, and then we can kind of take those skills and put them into a new process or into a revised questions to determine who's right, who's wrong for this particular role. With obviously the and you have mentioned, things are changing a lot, and this approach makes total sense, by the way. It's moving along with how the market is shifting. But how can this change even further over time? We've adopted this skill-based approach, and is it just constantly looking at just these skill gaps? Is that the future of potentially where recruitment can go? Do you and the reason I'm saying this is, we've gone through mass hiring, mass layoffs. Do you feel that those days are kind of have gone for good, and we should be kind of adopting this approach moving forward?
So I don't know the future. I can't tell you whether the market is going to bounce back. I can only hope so. My personal opinion is that this is only a correction of the market. The growth and the hyper growth that we've seen in the past, frankly, the past 10 years is unprecedented, and it's not really a normal part of the cycle. It came as I read an article yesterday, actually. That's why I'm quite I quite like your question. I read an article yesterday that was talking about the fact that all of this hyper growth was coming kind of with the advent of the cloud, so making it much cheaper for people to start their startups, and the 0% interest rates, where you are also able to get funding easily. So at the same time, it's cheaper
And there's more
and it's
capital.
easier to
Yeah.
get funding. So yes, and also it was that obviously also the smartphone. So you had both Apple and then Android a little bit later, opening up this new market, completely new market. You know what? You can build an app and get a real estate in everyone's phone and be able to actually monetize that. And the nature of the internet and how it works is that growth is more important, because once you are the biggest player, it's very hard for competition to come in. So everyone was focusing on growth. Now, if you look at the future, at least the present, the way that I've seen it in the past year, it's about efficiency. It's about making sure that you're making money and you're making sound decisions, and you're being very intentional in the way that you build your teams, in the way that you hire, all of those things. Which means that I think, and I was talking about it earlier in your first question, was the biggest challenge of TA. I think some of our value will be to sit down with the team and understand, okay, this is our skill gap. What if we can also train our team? What if the problem is actually the team dynamics? What if we can maybe do an offsite and see if we can increase that? And there are basically various ways to tackle this problem. And I do think we will have to keep adapting. It is what it is. The world is changing fast, and the ones that don't adapt will have to adapt at some point, right? And there are too many examples of companies and individuals and that have not adapted and have not survived. So if you can learn from history and from the market, right? Like, you have to just keep adapting. But this is the reading that I'm doing, and this is what I'm trying to implement in my day-to-day, right? Like, just trying to understand the teams better, get to know them better, do some coaching, understand, okay, why are we not productive enough? Maybe this project that is going on right now, and you're saying, okay, you need to hire someone. Maybe we don't need to hire someone permanently. Maybe we just need a contractor, right? Being a bit more creative about how you go about your hiring. So that would be my answer. I hope that I'm not going
No, it's all good.
too vague or too
It emulates really nicely what we do as well, what I think and believe. If a company ever approaches me and they say, look, we're hiring for front end developer, the first question is, do you actually need to hire this person? Which is really peculiar, because as a recruiter, right, you want to get the job, fill it, and move on. But my job isn't that. My job is to support the company. Do you actually need this person? I've got one client of mine who, quote unquote, are desperate for a particular role. The role's been open a year, right? You're not desperate. Let's be honest. You would like the person. You also don't need that person. Is that person, hiring that person, going to then boost you to the next level? Potentially. Different conversation to be had, but you don't need to hire that person tomorrow because you've had it open a year. It's those sorts of questions, I think, internal and external, as long as we're having them, we can then still drive accountability back to the hiring decision makers because they've got the budget. And I know a lot of teams want to spend budget so they can keep the budget for next year, which is completely not the right way to do it as well. But if we can hold them accountable and say, look,
Yeah.
you don't need that, or can we upskill, or can we get a freelancer in, or as you say, alternative methods, an intern or whatnot, then we can hopefully get, we'll probably get back to the same situation in another 10 years, but maybe it's not as bad. That's the better case scenario. So I understand hiring, through this skill-based approach. How you've explained to it, like I said, makes total sense to me. And hopefully once someone watches and sees that image, it makes sense to them. So let's say I'm an internal recruiter. I'm all in. I want to go for this approach. What do I need to do? What steps can I take internally right now to start getting the wheels in motion to move towards this type of recruitment?
Okay, so the first thing, just to make sure we are aligned, if you are a recruiter, I trust that you are acting as a partner and understand the business
I'd like to
needs
think I would. Yeah,
of
let's
the
assume so.
hiring. Yes, so that's the baseline, I would say, and my answer is taking that conversation further. So it's sitting down with the hiring manager, having a longer call, and understanding what skills do they have in their team. So you sit down, you have your wheel, right? If we're talking about a software engineer role, but you can do the same with any other role and try to come up with a list of skills that are relevant for the role. And then you talk about all of those skills and then maybe rank them in terms of importance. And then once you have a certain number of skills, you implement that in your interview process. Let's say you have 4 steps in your interview process. This is what research says is the kind of the optimal number. And then for each step, you are checking and evaluating a certain skill or a set of skills. So this is what I do in my roles. Here are the 12 things that we're looking for. It's a mix of qualifications. We need experience in this, we need experience in that,
Yep.
whatever it is. And then we have, your personality traits, like what are the traits that we're looking for. And then you have your maybe hard skills. So you have all of that. You put each set of competencies in each interview process, in interview
Right.
process steps, right? And then the next step, I would say, is trying to be creative in the way that you do interviews. So instead of thinking, okay, this one-on-one question and answer is the traditional way of doing interviews and evaluating skills, but let's say you have a specific skill, like let's say critical thinking or computational thinking even. What if you can give the candidate a task? What if that kind of looks like a scenario and you debate with them? You could also send them a skill assessment. They're basically trying to be creative and in how you evaluate those skills. So first, here are the skills that we want, and then designing the steps of the interview process to put those skills in the right place. And the next thing is that each step of the interview process should not necessarily be a Q&A, let's talk to each other, because there's a lot of bias, there's a lot of, a vibe going on, right? Like it's a very subjective thing. So what you want to do is there is room for that, but for certain skills, you have to have a certain assessment. This is what we do at Codility. So if you use us, so we have tests that are based on skills. So let's say you want to test computational thinking, you have you have access to a certain number of tasks to assess those specific skills. You send that to the candidate, and then they can also they do it, and then the client gets a report. So you, the recruiter, your hiring manager, gets a report, and you can kind of have an idea of the level of for this skill specifically, right? And then you can take it further. And if we're talking about software engineers, is using some collaboration tool in the interview. So instead of having just a video call, you have a call where you can do various different things. So for example, if you want to test system design thinking, if you want to test creative thinking, all of these other skills, you can use sort of a whiteboard. You can use an IDE that you can use together with the candidate. So all of these things that are things that you can find in our products. And again, this is specifically for hiring software engineers for now. We are also planning to open this up for hiring or testing AI skills. So for all of the roles, people are starting to use AI. So some of the companies that we talk to are looking into assessing the skill of using AI in their job. This is also something that you will be able to assess using our platform. So we are completely embracing AI and trying to think about how our company is going to use it. And this is one of the ways, right? So recently I've had a kind of a sales role. And what I've done, just to give you some examples, right, of this blueprint that I'm talking about. So we did, okay, what are the things that this person is going to be doing in their day-to-day? And we came up with 2 different tasks. One of those tasks is an email, responding to an email with the structure. So that's one thing. That was the first part of the interview process. And the second thing was designing a process or optimizing it. And this was a little bit later on in the interview process. So these 2 things were specifically things that the person would be doing in their job. And it is with that, we are evaluating key skills that are needed for that job. So it's not here is a general job. Let's have a conversation and let's figure it out. There is some of that, but there's also, let's make sure that the skills that we're looking for, the key skills, are evaluated properly.
I've got a couple of questions to come back. So we're identifying what the core skills are with our hiring team. We do that for every job that we're bringing on board, right? So it doesn't matter if you've got a Python developer in team 1, you're also going to do the same exercise for the Python developer in team 2, because different skills might be required. Is that right?
Yes, of course. If you already have that kind of relationship with the hiring manager and you've hired for their team before, you know what the team has, right? Maybe you've already hired someone for them, so you have close contact with them, so you understand the team better, and you can bring more value in consulting also the hiring manager. But yes, the idea is the same. So I'll give you another example, right? Like we were hiring specifically for a team that needed a specific skill that has nothing to do with the language or tools or whatever. We needed someone that has experience with a certain type of project, right? And in that, I sat down with the hiring manager and talked about, okay, what are the skills that we need? And it turns out that was the most important
Not
skill.
the language,
So
not anything
I
else. It was the
completely
project experience, or
no. So what I did is that I just deleted Python as a keyword in my sourcing. I just stopped looking for only Python. I was looking for that specific skill, because based on my conversation with the manager, it turned out that was not necessarily the most important thing. So we ended up hiring someone that has never worked with Python professionally, but is able to learn quickly and onboard. And this is what it's about, right? This is what
nice.
Skills-based hiring is. At the end, but it needs to be that conversation. You need to have the conversation with the hiring manager. And of course, if you have hiring managers that are not kind of with you with this idea, right? If they have their own thinking, this traditional thinking, I'm just giving you this job, just find me candidates, bring me candidates, and that's it, then we'll have a different conversation. You need to bring them with you, right? Like this is another level of work that you need to do, probably together with the top management. Make sure that your role is understood correctly. You're not an order taker. You are a business partner. You're bringing consulting. This is how we do things. I'm helping you hire better. So it's all of these things are, I would say, the next step in understanding really like your
So we've
value
got
as a
those
TA.
skills, we know what we're going after. We then bring those skills into more creative ways in the process. I do have a question, and I know diversity and inclusion is a huge topic for Codility, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
I'm thinking from a neurodivergent perspective. If we're creating all these different ways that they can, that we're testing these skills in the hiring process, does that not appeal to everybody anyways? Because I'll take the example, right? Say somebody isn't able or doesn't feel comfortable because of their, they might not feel comfortable reading in front of you or whatnot in a timed exercise. How then does that work? Because then somebody's getting a different process to test the skill versus somebody else. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So part of the consequences of having a skill-based approach is that you don't necessarily look at the credentials. You don't necessarily look at how nice the CV is or whatever, and you try to focus on the skills. So for some of the examples that I mentioned, the task was the first one, the first thing. So before I look at your CV, here is a task, do it. So I am evaluating in the beginning based on your result in the task. So that already kind of allows more varied profiles into the interview process, right? You kind of reduce bias, and this is kind of the one of the key ideas of the skill-based hiring approach. And yeah, I mean, yes, people will have the more chance to be in the
So
interview process.
I've sent you a resume. You've said, look, for this particular role, we want you to do this task before we even look at your resume. What's stopping? And this is coming back to the whole adage debate of do a task, don't do a task, where candidates don't want to do it, companies want you to do it. What's the drop-off rate been from your eyes? Do you see a lot of people turn around and say, no, I want to have a call first?
So I really like one of the comments that I got yesterday from a hiring manager: natural selection. So basically, if someone is not ready to do the task, then either you should look at your candidate experience and make sure that the interview process makes sense, as it's not too cumbersome. So if you get that feedback too often, it means that the problem is coming from you. But if you're only getting that feedback once, and everyone else in the process has done it, nicely, then that means that the person is not right for the role, or they're not motivated enough, right? Obviously, you're not going to ask someone to do a task that takes 2 hours before you ever talk to them. So that task should take you maybe 15 minutes. If you're going through an application, if you really want the job, I think you're going to spend 15 minutes on maybe 20 minutes or whatever, right? But you need to make sure that you understand the candidate and the needs of the role. And then you always have to iterate, right? We're talking about adapting. You always need to adapt. If the interview process I designed together with the hiring manager does not work anymore, or for some whatever reason, within 2 weeks, I see that it's not working, I need to adapt. This is part of my role, right? I'm seeing what works, what doesn't, and I come back to the hiring manager and say, okay, this has not worked. Let's try something else. So this is my answer there. Yeah, it does take a bit of experience to start doing it better. Sometimes you kind of feel maybe it's too much, right? Like, why am I doing all of these things? Why am I being creative, etc.? But in my experience, the hiring is the most important job in the company, and if you're doing it right, if you're doing it very well, you can potentially have the biggest impact in the success of the company. This is how I see my role. If I'm hiring, I don't know, 30 people this year, if those 30 people make the company better, this is my impact. So if you can, instead of having let's say a 60% chance that this person is going to work, I'm making it 70%, 75. Maybe that extra 15% is going to make or break the company. This is how I look at things, right? So if someone comes back and say, why would you doing all of this, and this seems like a lot of work,
Our job.
this is kind of how I see
No,
things.
but I
Yeah,
like
it's your
that
job.
with
It's
the
your job.
viewpoint, because I
Yeah.
find with talent acquisition and internal and external, we go through the motions of we review processes and when things are quiet, and then when things are back against the wall, you got loads of jobs, that just goes out the window. And only really at these points, and it's a really good time right now to try something new. You can A/B test this approach versus what you've already got, if you're lucky enough to have multiple roles on, and just see how the different outcomes are. And it's a really good time to do it, where a lot of teams aren't super busy. So I really appreciate you kind of running through that. And like I said, we're going to link to the document, obviously in the description of this, so people can read it, and then hopefully I'll also put your details, and they can link to you directly if they have any further questions. But no, I really appreciate you going through this. We'll wrap up on that one now, because obviously we've covered the core areas that we wanted to, and I thought it's enough for people to kind of get their teeth stuck into and try it. And like I said, if they have questions, we can connect to you. But I really do appreciate you taking your time and one, showing the research that you and the team have done. I think it's also important that when we bring in new models and new approaches, that there's actually there's reason to do it. It's not just, oh great, a new way, let's just all jump on the bandwagon. But there's actual reason behind it. So I do appreciate you kind of bringing it to light and kind of spending some time going through it with me today.
Yeah, I mean, happy to do that. And like you said, if anyone wants to get more details about the examples I gave, or maybe some help in actually designing a process, I'll be happy to help. I'm probably not the best person to come to about questions about the research. I might forward you to. Yeah, I mean, look, I haven't done the research myself. I've just used it, right? I have the privilege of being in the team, or at least in the company, and having those people that wrote it as colleagues. So I have kind of a direct insights. But yeah, I can definitely arrange something for you
No, I appreciate it.
if you
Thank you
want to
so
take
much for
this
taking the
further.
time.